Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate coming at you, continuing my reviews of the Amityville movies, or at least the ones that I've seen / own. Today I'm coming at you to review the Amityville Curse, which I think came out in 1990. Just like the predecessor, Amityville 4 The Evil Escapes, this one was put out originally on VHS by Vidmark Entertainment. This was the original VHS. I actually like the cover. I really think the cover is kind of cool. I like the colors and just the cover in this particular release. There was also a laserdisc of this release, A Return to the Most Dangerous House in the World. Of course, it's not the house we all know and love. But I like the color of the title, the font there, and just kind of like the artwork. Both spines are the same, I think. But Amityville Curse, let's get into it. So I watched this, rewatched this probably, last night. And for having, seeing it for the first time in quite a while, I imagine, I had a general recollection of this movie, but obviously the details escaped me. But it's when a movie really doesn't do a whole hell of a lot, it's easy not to remember it if it's not very memorable. It's kind of a natural situation. So this is a very different kind of a movie than 4. If I can just give an overview before I start the review, 4 to me actually is written by the guy who wrote the screenplay, written and directed by this guy who did the screenplay for the original movie. So it had, I guess 4 had what I would call I guess some kind of a, even if it's dumb, some kind of a competent scenario, and maybe the style of the movie was, next to nothing. This, I think, is the opposite. I love the style and the atmosphere of this movie, but the scenario, if you will, or the story, what the, the events that happen, is, almost next to nothing of interest. But this movie does up the ante, it downs the ante in the story or premise, story / premise / scenario category, and it ups the ante in style. Very much where, the 4th one was actually, I think, made for TV, and it very much felt like it, particularly with the music. I can happily say that this one doesn't have that made-for-TV feeling, and the music is actually really good, really invoking the feel of the music of the first 2 movies. So this movie starts out with this priest who's playing this, freaking pedal-powered, I imagine, organ thing at the beginning of the movie, and there's this woman who I guess is his assistant or something, that's like, oh, you better get to the confession box, confession starts soon. So he goes to, or cut to the confession box or whatever, and he opens the thing, and it's like, I'm here, you say your piece, or whatever the hell they say in this confession box crap. And it's just, this guy lights a cigarette, and it's a very ominous scene. It doesn't last very long, but, before the, basically the gist of the opening scene in this confession box is this, basically, it's done in an abbreviated way, which we'll see more details at the end of the movie. But basically, we're, I guess, led to believe the priest is basically shot point blank in the, confessional, and very much with like, what did I review? Did I review the 4th one? Oh yeah, the 4th one where I, talked about the guy at the beginning of the movie being repelled against the wall when he was trying to exorcise the house or whatever, feeling like, or reminding me of Exorcist 3, and then, the scene of the murder in the confessional at the beginning of this movie reminds me of Exorcist 3. I think Exorcist 3 came out in 1990, so this, movie came out around, it'd be interesting to know which one did the murder in the confessional first. But is that what you call it, a confessional? It just rolled off my tongue automatically. I don't know. Well, I think we'll just call the confession box a confessional. It just feels right, at the risk of, following, predetermined religious, names for religious items and stuff. But nah, you know what, it sounds better to call it the confession box because it's more generic. So that's what I'll call it. But it'd be interesting to know, which movie, Exorcist 3 or Amityville Curse, did the, the murder in the confession box first. But at any rate, they did them right around the exact same time. So that's how the movie starts. Then basically, we don't see it. It's seen off camera, and then later on at the end of the movie, we get a more whatever, we kind of get more of the event that was just abbreviated at the beginning of the movie. We see more of it happen towards the end, as the story is revealed or whatever. But then we just cut to people just taking this priest stuff, like the confession box crime scene and some of his belongings and the organ and stuff. And I guess, I don't know if we really necessarily know where they're putting the stuff at the beginning of the movie. The opening credits and the music for the opening credits is really good, again evoking the music of the first two Amityville movies, and the music in the whole movie is pretty good actually. And I can't stress how much I love the way the movie looks. The director, or director of photography, whoever choice it was to use a lot of these wide-angle lenses and stuff. I'm a very much appreciative of wide-angle lenses and that kind of stuff, and just static shots and stuff. And not only just the lenses that are used on this movie, but just I love the colors and the lighting. And for being like a low-budget kind of straight-to-video horror movie, it's got a relatively sophisticated look and feel to it. That's what's really a shame about this movie being what it is, or what it turned out to be. It's really a shame when a movie can really thrive on one aspect or a couple particular aspects, and then just completely fall short on others. It's just a bummer. But basically, after the opening credits kind of start with them moving a lot of his priest's belongings, including the confession box where he was killed into some spot. I don't know if it's clear where it's being put in in the opening credits, but we'll just cut to the chase. And what ends up happening is there's this two main characters, this couple. One of the woman's, this guy's wife. The two main characters. The wife is very much like the character in the movie The Slayer from the early '80s. Is this I don't know, psychic woman who is plagued by all these kind of dreams and visions of whatever and stuff. So these two, I think, are basically on their way to go look at a house, and on their way there, this woman is just drawn to, like, go down here or go there, or go here or there, or whatever the hell she says. So basically they stumbled across, and I think we're meant to assume, because this is the first time ever, since, well, the third movie, I guess, the first time, 4 didn't take place in Amityville. It was in California. This one, although I think it was shot in Canada, it does take place in Amityville, and I think we're just supposed to forget about the absolutely ridiculously cool look of the first, the house in the first 3 movies, and I think we're supposed to just assume, I don't know if we're supposed to, it's kind of confusing to me, I don't know if we're supposed to assume this is the Amityville house, or if it's just another, haunted or spooky house in Amityville. Regardless, this movie does actually take place in Amityville, and the psychic wife is drawn to this house, and sure enough, it's got a for sale sign in the yard, and the husband is like, oh boy, this one is really kind of cool, and they probably got it cheaper than the house they were going to go look at anyway. So basically, I don't know, it's really confusing. I guess a couple, like 2 couples and this hanger-on or guy, it seems like a bunch of friends all went in together to, with all their money combined to buy this house. It just seems really weird. Like, who the hell would do that? Like, and it's like a fixer-upper situation and all this kind of crap. So, the movie towards the beginning of the movie, it's just like these 2 couples and this 1/5 guy all moving into the house, and each has different, some have carpentry skills, each have some of the women will paint, the guys will carpentry, whatever. I guess their plan is to just temporarily, I don't hope they don't all plan to live, well, it doesn't really matter, it's kind of a big house with multiple floors or whatever, but they move in and kind of just, start work on the house or whatever. And this, meanwhile, throughout the movie, of course, this woman who's based, very similar to the character of Kay from The Slayer from the early '80s, is constantly having these visions. And, basically this character is almost a remake of that character from The Slayer. It's just tormented by these, psychic visions and all this stuff, seeing the vision of a dog and this teen boy, and then looking away and looking back and just seeing like the dog and the boys disappeared and all this kind of just creepy stuff. Well, before you know it, it's halfway into the movie, or not halfway, but 30 minutes into the movie, and not a whole hell of a lot has happened, although I do like the characters in this movie, you know, the two couples and the fifth guy. I think that they're all pretty good and they're very realistic. And that one kind of sexy Asian woman, I want to say she was in the original Schwarzenegger Conan the Barbarian movie. I think she was like that witch or whoever he came across in the movie or whatever. But she's kind of sexy. See a bath scene with her, but we don't see any goods or whatever. It kind of teases us. But I mean, I like the characters, I like the performers, and I can't stress enough how much I do like the atmosphere and the photography and some of the lighting with, you know, his characters looking around with candelabra lit with candles and stuff. I mean, it's really got a fantastic atmosphere that, in my opinion, the fourth one really was missing. But unfortunately, to go along with the fantastic atmosphere, it's got really nothing to say, and it's almost like a 30-minute episode stretched into nearly 90-minute movie. It's got really nothing to say, and I'm really confused about if this is supposed to be the Amityville house from like the first three movies. Just, you know, we're supposed to forget about how cool it looked and just, you know, accept this new look, and or if this is just a house that previously didn't have any problems but then became haunted or whatever when the confession box where the priest was killed in was moved into the basement. Later on, I think it almost happened. I think it takes like 30 minutes for characters to even realize that all this stuff is in the basement. Of course, I don't think they necessarily know that that confession box is a crime scene, but I wouldn't say it's an incredibly boring movie because I like the atmosphere and the characters and stuff, but as a horror movie or as an Amityville movie or a horror movie, it really doesn't do anything. It tries to be creepy with, like I say, her visions and stuff, but before you know it, and this is I guess a testament to how the movie really isn't necessarily boring, or at least for me. Before you know it, it's an hour into the movie and not a whole hell of a lot has happened, and it takes I don't think there's a kill or a murder or an accident or anything until basically, an hour into the movie, where this one woman who was the assistant or whatever of the priest who got killed at the beginning of the movie is kind of this creepy character who keeps coming around and, just creeping out these characters who just bought the house. She ends up just she's looking around downstairs or something and we just see a hand push her down the stairs. And I mean, obviously that's not supernatural because it's a hand that pushed her down the stairs. So basically, I'm just going to cut to the chase and reveal basically what happens with the reveal at the end of the movie, what this movie is really about. Basically throughout the movie, or basically by the end of the movie, we find out that, one of the guys of this the guy who's the boyfriend of the hot Asian chick or whatever the hell nationality she is, he's basically, I forgot to say that, this movie takes place, after the murder at the beginning of the movie. It cuts to 12 years later after all the stuff had been stored, all the stuff stored in the basement, and then it cuts to 12 years later. I forgot that plot point. But basically, we find out that the boyfriend of the Asian woman, which is one of the people, one of the 5 people who moved into this house, was the killer of the priest at the beginning of the movie. And the reason why is because this guy who killed the priest was, I guess we're meant to assume, illegitimate child of the priest. And this guy, I mean, obviously, I guess, is just kind of nuts in general if he's just going to come kill your dad because what? He had you, it didn't have anything to do with your life. I mean, whatever. So I'm really confused, like, how they write this off as an Amityville movie or say that this is an Amityville movie because, and then just by chance 12 years later he moves into this house where in the basement, the belongings and the confession box he killed his priest dad in is stored in the basement. I don't know if and then by the end of the movie, this guy kind of goes nuts and starts, I can't even remember. I mean, obviously he's the one who probably pushed that woman down the stairs, but I can't remember at the end of the movie. I mean, he just starts going nuts and wacko and stuff. So I'm really confused if this movie's really vague in the sense that I don't know if this house is what drove him nuts or, drove his repressed actions of the past back to the forefront to make him, go nutty again, or if just the fact that the confession booth box, whatever the hell I'm calling it, where the murder took place is stored in the premises, or if he just happened to just go wacky just at the time. Anyway, I don't know. This movie's really kind of ambiguous and makes absolutely no sense, but that's the story. I mean, it really has nothing to do with, a scary, spooky, possessed Amityville house. It's just a guy who at the beginning of the movie killed his, priest dad, who had an illegitimate son who was him. Then they put some of the priest's belongings in this house, and then 12 years later he just happens to move into this house where his dead priest's dad, where he murdered himself, his belongings are, and just for why wouldn't they chop that confession box up into wood and just burn it? Like, they just take it and let's just put it in the basement of this house. It's just, it makes no sense. And then towards the end of the movie he's attacking someone or whatever, and they splash acid on his face, and he's like pursuing this victim. I think it's the main kind of psychic woman. The makeup and stuff. I mean, I kind of like the scene after he gets splashed in the face with acid, and as the scene progresses, I mean, the side of his face just gets more and more just melted and just sagging and stuff. I kind of do like the scene where he's trying to attack or kill this woman, and she uses a nail gun on him and all this kind of stuff or whatever. But I mean, to call this an Amityville movie is just kind of goofy, because as I said, it's not really a possessed house movie. It's more of a guy who killed his dad and then 12 years later moves into the house where his dad's belongings are kept, and I don't know if that's what makes him go nuts at the end, or he just happens to go nuts at the end, or whatever. But that's the gist of this movie. It's very confusing. And I think we got some backstory about this elusive, ghost of this teen guy well, not constantly, but I think 2 times is seen with the dog, and then the boy disappears and the dog's still there. We get some backstory about this boy having hung himself or some crap, but I mean, I don't think it really has anything to do with anything that happens in this movie, so I don't understand. Maybe it does and I just couldn't follow it or whatever, but it just seems this movie just is so, it's almost like every 10 minutes was written by someone else, and all the pieces just don't go together to save anyone's life or whatever. I mean, you got cool elements and cool visuals, but I mean, talk about a scenario and a structure that just doesn't fit together. Oh my golly. So basically, when all's said and done, I don't really fully understand what the hell this movie's trying to say. It's just kind of exists to exist. It's a really, really kind of a, like I say, it looks, I like the atmosphere, the music, and the characters, and the world that the movie creates, but what it has to say is pretty much virtually nothing. I am going to give it, a 1/4 star more than Amityville 4. I will give it 3/4 stars out of 4 stars. So almost, 1/4 away from 1 star, and that's only just because, for me, atmosphere and just mood and the way a movie looks and the characters and the real, just the world that the movie creates is really important. So that's why I give this a 1/4 star more than Amityville 4. I do believe, I do hold to kind of the notion that Amityville 4 is a more competently written movie, but as I said at the beginning of this review, Amityville 4 is like all bright sunny days, and it doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of spooky ambiance, whereas this movie really, really, really has a whole hell of a lot of spooky ambiance, but then no story. And it's just, there's no story that I can understand or that makes any lick of sense for 1 iota worth or whatever. So I guess that'll be my review of the Amityville Curse. I did check just today, I think, and I think at this point it is on YouTube if you wanted to watch the Amityville Curse. Hopefully, when you watch this video it's still up, or someone's put it up or whatever. That's my review of the Amityville Curse. It's just a shame when, like I say, a movie's got really strong aspects, well, maybe not really strong, but certain strong aspects, and then completely weak other aspects. It makes you wonder, but anyway, thank you very much for watching my review of the Amityville Curse, and as always, we'll catch you next time.